Okay, this is going to be a brief podcast, and what I'm going to talk about is the consolidation of missions into San Antonio. One quick point that I think is pretty interesting: the reason that Aguayo, when he came up, the reason that he founded La Bahia, which becomes Goliad, is that it provided easy access to Veracruz. And so by establishing a Spanish presence in what's now Goliad, the Spanish could resupply Spanish Texas via Veracruz, and goods from Spanish Texas could go to Veracruz. So one of the things that's important about the establishment of what's Goliad, it again, it's furthering that infrastructure, the Spanish infrastructure in Texas. So it wasn't random that Aguayo established Goliad where it is now. La Bahia was the original name. It was to create a transportation network with the Mexican port, or the Spanish Mexican port of Veracruz. Also, another point about La Bahia, which is now Goliad, it was a mission that was designed to Christianize the Karankawa. So once again, the Karankawa appear in our story. They're a player in our story until they're basically wiped out by Stephen F. Austin in the 1820s. Okay, so real quickly, let's go back up to San Antonio. San Antonio had been reinforced by the Aguayo expedition. There were a couple of dozen soldiers here. Um, and in 1720, actually, even before Aguayo arrived in San Antonio, a second mission was established here, San Jose. So we have Valero, the Valero mission, which is famous now for the Alamo. San Jose, which is the second mission established in San Antonio, and it's established in 1720, and once again reinforced by Aguayo. But by the 1730s, the Spanish are feeling pretty confident that the French aren't going to invade Texas. And like I've said a bunch, when the Spanish feel okay about their Texas border with Louisiana, they withdraw resources or they consolidate. And this is what happens in the 1730s. Three missions that were just struggling um, in, um, in East Texas were closed, and they were moved to San Antonio. So what you have, 1731, and again, don't get too fussed about dates, but the big thing here is that in the early 1730s, you have a consolidation of missions in San Antonio. That's why to this day San Antonio has 5 missions. And these are the missions that are moved to San Antonio from East Texas are Concepcion, San Juan Capistrano, and San Francisco de la Espada. So this is a super important moment in the history of San Antonio, because what the Spanish government is doing, it's consolidating its resources in the community of San Antonio. Now, the Spanish government does something else. It imports about 56 or 60 residents of the Canary Islands. The Canary Islands are islands off the coast of Spain. And the Spanish government persuaded a group of Canary Islanders to travel from these islands to San Antonio. And again, this was, as you might guess, an attempt by the Spanish to populate San Antonio. And the Canary Islanders arrive about the same time that the 3 missions, Concepcion, San Juan Capistrano, and Espada, are moved to San Antonio. Okay, here's the big picture. By the 1730s, San Antonio now has 5 missions. Three of the missions, the 3 newish missions in San Antonio, have been closed in East Texas and moved to San Antonio. So, big picture, San Antonio, the Spanish government in Mexico City is starting to consolidate resources in San Antonio. There are still Spanish in East Texas. Las Ideas is still technically the capital of Spanish Texas. But in reality, the concentration of resources in Spanish Texas is happening in San Antonio. And the moving of these three missions is significant, and the missions will be on the outline that I send out with the announcement. It's an important moment in consolidating San Antonio as the center of Spanish Texas. But one of the things to realize, these missions are also involved in ranching, especially cattle ranching and horse ranching. So the mission, not only is it a religious consolidation, but it's a bit of an economic consolidation as well. This is really going to establish the ranching industry in the San Antonio area: cattle, horses, to a lesser extent, sheep and goats. So, big picture, by the early 1730s, the Spanish are consolidating resources in the San Antonio area. It is becoming by far the most important community in Spanish Texas, although there is still a Spanish presence in East Texas. The Spanish need to keep an eye on the French, and they're not going to completely withdraw from East Texas.